Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to discuss about linear momentum of a system of particles. We have already discussed about linear momentum of a single particle of mass m and moving with a velocity vector v as the product of mass and velocity. That is, vector p is equal to, I am using small letter p here, okay, vector p is equal to mass into velocity vector. So, where vector p is actually the linear momentum. Okay, this is actually a vector quantity, that is why a vector sign is marked over this p. So, linear momentum of a single particle, only one particle we are considering, and its mass is m, it is moving with a velocity vector v. So, its linear momentum is defined as a product of its mass and velocity, and I am taking this as in equation number 1. Okay, this is the case for a single particle. We are considering only one particle. Alright, now from Newton's second law of motion, the rate of change of momentum of a single particle can be written as vector f is equal to d vector p divided by dt or d by dt of vector p. Okay, I am taking this as equation number 2 where vector f is the force on the particle. Okay, we have discussed about the cases of a single particle, that is we have discussed about the cases of a single particle so far. Now, let us consider a system of n particles. There are n number of particles in a system. Okay, let m1 be the mass of the first particle, let m2 be the mass of the second particle, etc. Let mn be the mass of the nth particle. Alright, let vector v1 be the velocity of the first particle, vector v2 be the velocity of the second particle, etc. Let vector v subscript n be the velocity of the nth particle. Alright, now consider the first particle. Its mass is m1 and its velocity is vector v1. Okay, so the linear momentum of the first particle is what? Vector p1 is equal to its mass into its velocity, that is m1 into vector v1. Okay, linear momentum of the second particle can be written as vector p2 is equal to mass m2 into its velocity vector v2. Alright, similarly for the nth particle, its linear momentum can be written as, that is linear momentum of the nth particle is equal to its mass into its velocity vector vn. Okay, so here we have considered a system of n particles now. Linear momentum of the system is defined as the vector sum of linear momentum of all individual particles of the system. That is, linear momentum of the system of particles, this is capital letter, okay, vector p is equal to the vector sum of linear momentum of all individual particles of the system. That is, total linear momentum vector p is equal to vector p1 plus vector p2 plus vector p3 plus etc. plus vector pn. Alright, so we can write vector p is equal to, vector p1 is what? m1 into vector v1 plus vector p2 is what? m2 into vector v2 plus etc. plus vector pn is m1 into vector vn. Alright, I am taking this as equation number 3. Now, when we have discussed about motion of center of mass in our previous video, we got one such equation, no? That is m into vector v is equal to m1 into vector v1 plus m2 into vector v2 plus etc. plus mn into vector vn. Okay, this was actually equation number 2 in the previous video. I will provide the link in the description box. If you want, you can watch that. Okay, where this capital letter m is the total mass of the system, which was considered as concentrated at the center of mass. Okay, and vector v is the velocity of the center of mass. From equation number 3, we have the total linear momentum of the system of n particles as like this. Okay, then in our previous video, we got one such equation. This was actually equation number 2 in the previous video. Now, you just compare these two equations. One is equation number 2, another one is equation number 3. Okay, see, here vector p is equal to m1 into vector v1 plus m2 into vector v2 plus etc. plus mn into vector vn. Here, m into vector v is equal to m1 into vector v1 plus m2 into vector v2 plus etc. plus mn into vector vn. So see, RHS of both the equations are the same now. So we can equate their LHS. Okay, right hand side of both the equations are the same, m1 v1 plus m2 v2 plus like that. Okay, so we can equate their LHS. So we can write vector P is equal to what? M into vector V. Alright, where vector P is the total linear momentum of the system of particles. Capital letter M is the the total mass of that system. Okay, vector V is the velocity with which the center of mass moves. I am taking this as equation number 4. Now, what does this equation say? The total linear momentum of a system of n particles is equal to the product of the total mass of the system and the velocity of the center of mass. Okay, next I am differentiating the two sides of this equation with respect to time. So we can write d by dt of vector P is equal to d by dt of m into vector V. Okay, we are differentiating both the sides of this equation number 4 with respect to time. So we can write d vector P divided by dt is equal to d by dt of m into vector V. Alright, see, since mass is a constant, we can take this mass outside. So this becomes what? D vector P divided by dt is equal to, mass can be taken outside. So m into d by dt of vector V. Alright, this vector V is actually the velocity of the center of mass now. So d vector V divided by dt or d by dt of vector V will be the acceleration of the center of mass now. Okay, so we can write it as m into vector A. Okay, where vector A is the acceleration of the center of mass. Alright. In our previous video, while we have discussed about the motion of center of mass, I will provide the link in the description box for that. If you want, you can watch that. So while we have discussed about the motion of center of mass, we got one such equation, m into vector A is equal to vector F external, that is external force, and this was actually equation number 5 in our previous video. See, here we got d vector P divided by d vector P divided by dt is equal to m into vector A. That is, this can be written as like, m into vector A is equal to what? D vector P divided by dt. This was equation number 4 now, so I am taking this as equation number 5. This was equation number 5 actually in the previous video. Okay, this is equation number 5 in this video. Alright, now while we compare these two equations, see here we have m into vector A is equal to d by dt of vector P. Here we have m into vector A is equal to vector F external. Okay, see, LHS of both the equations are the same. So we can equate the RHS of these two equations. So when we equate RHS of these two equations, we can write, here we have d vector P by dt. So we can write d vector P divided by dt is equal to what? Vector F external. Alright, I am taking this as equation number 6. That is, the rate of change in momentum of a system of particles is equal to the net external force on the particle. So we got equation number 6 like this. For a single particle, Newton's second law is written in symbolic form like this: vector F is equal to d vector P divided by dt. This vector P is actually the momentum of that particular particle. We are considering only one particle, so the momentum of that particle. Okay, so for a system of particles, we can write it as vector F external, that is, there can be a number of forces. The total net external force acting on the system of particles is equal to d by dt of total linear momentum. No, so d by dt of vector P. This is capital letter P and this is small letter p. Okay, and see, this equation number 6 is actually the Newton's second law extended to a system of particles now. Okay, now suppose that the sum of external forces acting on the system of particles is 0. That is, suppose vector F external is equal to 0. Okay, then equation number 6 becomes d vector P divided by dt. D by dt of vector P is equal to vector F external, but we are taking it as 0. Alright, that is derivative of vector P, total linear momentum of the system of n particles with respect to time is equal to 0. That means vector P is equal to a constant. I am taking this as equation number 7. See, derivative of vector P equal to 0 means vector P is a constant. Since derivative of a constant is 0. Okay, derivative of a constant is 0. Here derivative of vector P equal to 0. So that vector P must be a constant now. Okay, derivative of a constant is 0. Here derivative of vector P equal to 0. So that vector P must be a constant. Then only its derivative with respect to time will be a 0. Okay, so we can write vector P equal to a constant. I am taking it as equation number 7. That is, when the total external force acting on the system of particles is 0, the total linear momentum of the system is constant. This is the law of conservation of the total linear momentum of a system of particles. That is, according to this law of conservation of total linear momentum of a system of particles, when the external force acting on the system of particles is 0, the total linear momentum of the system is a constant. Okay, now from equation number 4, we have vector P is equal to m into vector V. This was actually equation number 4. Here, vector P is a constant. Here we got vector P as a constant. So, vector P is a constant implies vector V is a constant. Right. Because M, it is a total mass of the system, which is a constant. That is, throughout we are taking this assumption, mass is a constant. So, mass is already a constant. So, to make vector P a constant, vector V must be a constant now. Okay. Vector V is the velocity of the center of mass. What I am saying is, when the total external force acting on the system is 0, the total linear momentum is equal to a constant and the velocity of the center of mass vector V that remains a constant. Center of mass moves with a constant velocity means the center of mass moves uniformly in a straight line like a free particle. If the center of mass moves like this in such a direction with a constant speed, here though the speed is constant, the direction changes continuously, so velocity is not constant here. So center of mass moves with a constant velocity means it moves in a straight line uniformly like a free particle. Okay, now from equation number 7, we have vector P equal to a constant. Okay, this was actually equation number 7. Okay, vector P equal to a constant. This is a vector equation. Now, vector P is a vector here. It will have one x component, y component as well as z component. So, this equation is equivalent to 3 scalar equations. One is Px is equal to C1. Another one is Py equal to C2. Another one is Pz is equal to C3. Where Px is the x component of the total linear momentum along the x-axis. The component of the total linear momentum along the x-axis. Py is the y component of the total linear momentum and Pz is the z component of the total linear momentum. Okay, or the component of the total linear momentum along the z-axis. Okay, C1, C2, C3 are constants. Okay, because vector P equal to a constant. So, C1, C2, C3 are constants here. Now, let us consider the radioactive decay of a moving unstable particle like the nucleus of a radium. Nucleus of radium. Okay, see here we have a radium nucleus. It is moving in this direction. It is an unstable nucleus. So, it disintegrates into a nucleus of radon and an alpha particle, that is helium nucleus. Alpha particle is actually identical to a helium atom, but it has it contains only 2 protons and neutrons. That is, alpha particle is the same as the nucleus of a helium atom. That is why helium is written here. Okay, this is an alpha particle. Alright, this is not helium atom, this is alpha particle, because alpha particle is the same as the nucleus of a helium atom. So, this is actually an alpha particle. Alright, so the forces, we know that the forces which lead to the radioactive decay of radium are internal forces. The external forces on the system are negligible. When we have discussed about the motion of center of mass, I will provide the link in the description box. If you want, you can watch that. We have seen that the internal forces contribute nothing to the motion of center of mass. Only the external force contributes to the motion of center of mass. So, the particles produced in the decay, that is alpha particle and the radon nucleus, move in different directions in such a way that their center of mass moves along the same path. Okay, moves along the same path along which the original decaying radium nucleus was moving. Okay, see, the radium nucleus and its center of mass were moving along this direction, along this straight line path initially, no? Okay, so after the decay, from here the decay takes place. After the decay, its center of mass move along its straight path. See, after the decay, we got two particles. One is alpha particle, another one is radon nucleus. They are moving different directions. But their center of mass, when radon is here and alpha particle is here, their center of mass lies here. So after some time, the radon may be here, helium might be here. So center of mass might be somewhere here. Okay, center of mass always move along the same straight path. Okay, along which the original decaying radium nucleus was moving. Next, let us see another situation of splitting of the same heavy nucleus radium. But here the difference with this is the center of mass of the radium is at rest here. That is, if we observe the decay from the frame of reference in which the center of mass is at rest, the motion of that is, if you observe the decay of this radium nucleus, heavy radium nucleus, unstable nucleus, from the frame of reference in which its center of mass is at rest, the motion of radon and alpha particle looks simple here. Here, initially the center of mass is at rest. So, after the decay too, the center of mass wants to be remained at rest. So, the product particles, that is alpha particle and the radon, move back to back. Okay, see, alpha particle is moving in this direction and radon is moving in this direction. They are moving back to back with their center of mass remaining at rest always. For example, while we have discussed about the center of mass, we got one such equation to determine its value, no? That is, here this is actually a one-dimensional case, no? Okay, this is acting along, this is actually along one particular axis. If we are taking this as y-axis, okay, we can write y is equal to m1 y1 plus m2 y2 divided by m1 plus m2. Okay, y is the position of that center of mass, which is equal to m1 y1 plus m2 y2 divided by m1 plus m2. So, let the center of mass be here at the origin. Okay, if I am considering an axis here, let it be the origin of that axis. So, center of mass, let the center of mass of that radium nucleus be here at the origin. Okay, so y equal to 0 here. Alright, this is equal to I'm just taking the mass of the alpha particle as 4. I'm simply taking a number, okay. I'm not, I don't know more about chemistry. I'm just taking a number. I'm just taking the mass of this helium, not helium, alpha particle as m1 is equal to 4. Whatever be the unit, let it be like this. And I'm taking the mass of this radon as, I'm taking it as m2 and I'm taking it as 86. Whatever be the unit, I'm just taking a number. Okay, see, m2, I'm just taking it as 86. Okay, I don't know whether it is the mass of the radon or not. I'm just taking a number. It is equal to 86. Okay, see, here what I want to say is, here you just see, radon is only here. It has reached only here. But helium has, the alpha particle has reached somewhere here. Okay, the center of mass is here. After the decay, radon has reached only here, but the alpha particle has traveled some more distance and reached here. Why it is marked like this? That is what I am going to say. Okay, for that consider the center of mass at, it is at the origin. So, y equal to 0 here. Okay, then m1, that is I am taking it as 4. Okay, into, I am taking the y1, its position, I am just taking its position as I'm taking it as y1 is equal to 100 here. I'm just taking a number, okay. I'm just taking y1 is equal to 100. It is 100 units away from the origin. Okay, alpha particle is 100 units away from the origin for a particular moment. Okay, so y1 is equal to 100. So, 4 into 100 plus m2. M2 is 86 into, we don't know this y2. I'm taking it as y2 here. Okay, y2. So, this divided by m1 plus m2, that is 86 plus 4. which is 90. So 90 into 0, that becomes 0. So we get 400. 4 into 100, 400 plus 86y2 equal to 0. Alright. So 86y2 is equal to 0 minus 400. Therefore, y2 is equal to minus 400 divided by 86. Okay, minus 400 divided by 86. While you are doing this, you will be getting minus 4.65 something unit. Okay, whatever be that unit, some unit will be there. I am just taking this number minus 4.65. So, see, we have taken the position of that alpha particle from the origin as 100 units away from the origin. But see, we got y2, which is actually the position of this radon nucleus, which is only minus 4.65. That is from here to here only 4.65 units. Okay, this radon is only 4.65 units away from the origin. Okay, where the center of mass is at rest. Alright, and it is negative means it is along the negative y direction. Okay, see, the helium nucleus, it has, not helium, alpha particle, it has less mass compared to the radon. So, alpha particle has traveled some more distance than radon. Okay, alpha particle has reached here 100 units away from the origin, but radon, since it has more mass, it has reached only here. Then only why? Then only the center of mass would be here itself. Then only the center of mass remains at rest. Okay, if it is not the situation, the center of mass would not be staying here. It would be somewhere here, it would be somewhere here, like that, if this is not the situation. Alright, so here the center of mass, initially the center of mass is at rest, and after the decay 2, the center of mass wants to be at rest. So the product particles radon and the alpha particle move back to back. One is along the positive y direction, then another one is along the negative y direction, with their center of mass remaining at rest. Alright. Now let us see another example. This figure actually shows the trajectories of two stars S1 and S2. This red colored one, that is actually the trajectory of the star S2, and this green colored one is actually the trajectory of the star S1. This is actually the case of binary stars S1 and S2. Binary stars are two stars orbiting around a common center of mass. So, wherever be the two stars S1 and S2, their center of mass lie in the straight line, in this yellow color straight line. So here, if there are no external forces, the center of mass of a double star or binary star moves like a free particle as shown here. Okay, that is their center of mass will be in uniform motion. Center of mass moves along this straight path. See, this is actually the trajectories of two stars S1 and S2 of equal masses. Okay, and it's look complicated. See, initially, if the two stars S1 and S2 were somewhere here, okay, for example, you just imagine the star S2 were here, it was here, and the star S1 was here. So, their center of mass would be here. Alright, then after some time, the star S1 might have reached here, then star S2 might have reached here, but their center of mass would be here. Okay, that is along the center of mass moves along the straight line. After some time, you see this star S2 reaches here. Okay, and the star S1 reaches here. So their center of mass would be somewhere here. Alright, then after some time, the star S1 might have reached here, S2 might have reached here. So their center of mass would be somewhere here. And when we join these points, actually we get a straight line here. That means the center of mass moves along a straight path. Alright, that is wherever be the two stars S1 and S2, their center of mass lie in the straight line. It doesn't mean that center of mass is always here. Here, this is marked because the star S1 and S2 are here, so their center of mass is here. But initially the stars were here, then after sometimes the two stars would be somewhere here. Okay, then according to that, the center of mass position also changes, but that change will be taking place along the straight path. So, wherever be the two stars S1 and S2, their center of mass lie in this straight line. This one is actually a quite complicated one. It's look complicated. So, if you observe the same from the frame of reference which is fixed on the center of mass. Okay, if you are observing the same thing from a frame of reference which is fixed on the center of mass. That is, if you observe the same thing from the center of mass frame, the motion of the binary stars S1 and S2 looks simple like this. That is, if we observe the motion of the binary stars from the center of mass frame, it looks like the two stars S1 and S2 are moving in a circle about a center of mass. Okay, about the center of mass C, which is at rest, because we have fixed the frame of reference on the center of mass. So, center of mass is at rest with respect to that frame of reference now. Okay, so if you observe the motion of the binary stars from the center of mass frame, it looks like the two stars S1 and S2 are moving in a circle about the center of mass, which is at rest. The two stars must be, S1 and S2 must be diametrically opposite to each other to make the center of mass adhere itself. Okay, if they were not diametrically opposite, then the position of the center of mass would change. It will not remain here. So, in this way of representation, we can represent the same complicated one like this. This is a simple one. So, in this way of representation, the two stars must be always diametrically opposite to each other. Okay, that is, if you are taking the star S1 somewhere here, then star S2 must be represented here. Then only their center of mass lie here. Alright. So, in this video, we have discussed about the linear momentum of a system of particles. I hope you understood this. Thank you.